Hello guys. I'll just do a little bit of a checking of the sound here. Hey guys, it's another cold day in Paris. Hello to the 8 concurrent viewers that we have at the moment. If you guys don't already know, this is just a little stream that we do where we can answer your questions. We can go through the onboarding process for ledger devices and things like that. So first thing I wanted to mention, if you guys have any relatively more complex questions or anything like that, you can always jump onto our help desk, which is on support.ledger.com. I got it in the background here, and you can just use the contact us button on the bottom right hand side. Otherwise, I'll try to get a hold of your questions, or one of my colleagues will try to get a hold of your questions in the chat as well, and see how we go from there. Hello to everyone that's joining us at the moment. I know I can see Smart Business, you guys mentioning that you need more stacks videos. Yes, if I had the ability to do so, I definitely would. But not one that I have at the moment. But it's kind of the thing that I want to do, at least speak about in terms of managing your assets. Let's say, if you've just purchased the stacks, or if you've just purchased a device, if you're pulling your assets off an exchange, for example, and just maybe some of the common issues that you might come across and things like that, to make sure that you guys keep your assets safe, that you don't lose anything or anything like that. What I want to do first is run through the process of getting set up. What I've actually done here is I've actually got a device here that I have previously set up. I'm just going to see, this is actually my personal device if you guys aren't aware, but I'm going to see if I've set it up with my normal dummy password. If you guys have tuned in before, it is, I just broadcast it, but I never use it. Here, boom. Oh, okay. That's okay. What we can do is grab a new device, but what I was going to go through today is just, let's say we're getting all set up for the first time. What are the potential issues that you might come across with regards to setting up a ledger device or sending your assets from the exchange? Let's disconnect this. Setting up your device from an exchange, sending your assets from an exchange to, let's say, a different to your ledger device or something like that. I'm just going to pop that in here. So let's say, okay, I know this will be 0, 0, 0, 0, boom. And yes, that's it there. So let's say I'm getting set up for the first time. First of all, let's go through the Ledger Live setup process. If you guys have all those, I can see some questions popping in as well. So I'll try to get through those as best I can. And I have a colleague potentially in here that might be able to answer them as well. So just so you guys know, just pop them in the chat and I'll try to get through them as best I can. Now, being that you can see that my device is set up, I'm going to go through and say that I already have a recovery phrase. If you don't have that all set up though, you can definitely make sure to go through the setup process. It'll actually go through a guide as to how to get that all set up in particular. So I'll go through that now, and then I'll actually see what questions that we have here. Hi guys, now that High Finance has their new token, will you also support it? It's not something that's all automatically supported necessarily, although it doesn't mean that you can't manage the asset. To go into more detail in particular, what I mean by that is that if Hi-Fi Finance, they come to us. If it's just an ERC20 token or something like that, for example, they can actually go to our developer documentation and they can actually add a new token. They just need to give us the contract, things like that. If it's a different network or a blockchain that it might need to be supported, they might need to write an application. So that might be something to consider. It does depend. I don't know how to pronounce your name, Geme Lipipor, but yes, definitely get the devs from Hi-Fi Finance. They can get to us if they need to with regards to the token. If it's an ERC or BEP20 token, for example, generally speaking, there's a form that developers can go in and add the contracts to in particular. Okay, done a genuine check on the main screen. Ulumide asks, how is it possible to look at my NEAR tokens on a Nano S Plus with Ledger Live? We can go through that process now, actually, seeing that we've just got Ledger Live open. If I remember correctly, NEAR as a first thing I can do, let's say if I was one of you guys, I didn't work here, the first thing I can do is I can always check on our website if a token is supported, just to make sure. Okay, so boom, doesn't say, I don't know if it's an issue with, okay, looks like it's supported. Now I might need to use NEAR Wallet that you see there. So it's not something that we can do within Ledger Live. My understanding, it is something that is on the horizon. So, but I can't give you a specific time frame, unfortunately. But you can see here, it's something you can manage with your Ledger device. So definitely something I can go through the basics of as well. What I was going to do is add an account within Ledger Live and then go from there. So let's add an account to, let's say, get ourselves all set up. Let's say I wanted to get some assets off Binance. I think is the big news in town at the moment, that there are a lot of outflows of, apparently. So let's say it's something simple, Bitcoin, first one that comes up, for example. I just had to click on that big blue screen button there, add account, and because I already had the Bitcoin app installed, it was okay for me to just open the application. But one thing to note is that if I don't have it installed, it might ask me to install the application, or you can see my ledger here to actually install applications. So in your case, Ulumide, I'm probably butchering that name, you can potentially either install a NEAR app when it does become available, or being that we have the NEAR wallet available and it's supported, we should be able to install that in my ledger right now, actually. So we can double check that as well. Let's see if we have another question here. I saw that just before. How Nano S run without battery? How many days can you keep without reconnect the device? The Nano S does not have a battery, so I think hopefully that answers your question. But how many days can you keep it without reconnecting it? I wouldn't have the exact answer to that in particular, but if you're having physical issues with the device, definitely get a hold of us. We'll at least try to see what we can do the best we can with regard to that. Okay, let me just add the account before I answer that next question there. It was, hi, does Ledger support Zilliqa? Why does it say Binance Smart Chain? The reason it would say Binance Chain, I think you mentioned, but the reason it would mention any Binance or anything like that would be because the ZIL token as a Binance BEP20 token is supported within Ledger Live, but ZIL may or may not be. So that's why you might see that in particular. Okay, I added an account, is what I was going to do, and you will be able to see your accounts under the accounts tab. It should be pretty self-explanatory with regards to that. But I think if we say, okay, you got your address, I go through the I wanted to receive, right? So I go through the receive process, and I get my address, and I put it into Binance, and I go through the process, and it's not appeared. What might have happened? In the case of Bitcoin in particular, generally speaking, a lot of the issues should have been stopped either at the Binance stage when you're withdrawing, or potentially at this stage. But main things that I could think of that might be affecting you, I'm just trying to think. For Bitcoin in particular, there shouldn't be too many. I think most of the issues I might think that you would come across would be if you're withdrawing Ethereum. Now, why is that? Well, Binance Smart Chain or BSC, Ethereum, a lot of the layer 2, so Optimism and Arbitrum, they all use addresses that start with 0x. I'm assuming you would have seen that before. And so let's add an Ethereum account just so we can show you guys what they might look like. And why might that be the case? Because they're all EVM compatible. It's something that we can go into if you guys are interested in that. But if that ever happens, it's just to make you just need to make sure what network the asset that you have drawn has come out for. So if you've withdrawn, let's say, Chainlink, and if you've withdrawn it on Arbitrum or Optimism or Ethereum mainnet, or if you've withdrawn, let's say, Ethereum on Binance Smart Chain, these could potentially affect you being able to see the asset. It might not be the only thing, but it could be something that could happen in particular. So I'll get that all added in so I can show you what the address looks like, how it does look the same on Ethereum and on Polygon and on whatever, and just to give you guys a better idea of what that might look like. I'll see if we can answer some questions as well. I think Yakov asked about your order. Definitely get a hold of us, Yakov, with regards to that. You can go through to support.ledger.com. You can use the contact us on the bottom right-hand side. We might be able to give more information or work with you to see what we can do with regard to that. Nature Boy asks, once I receive my Ledger stacks, will my Nano X still be usable? It will indeed, 100%. Well, of course, being that it's physically usable as well. Could I use it as a backup once I have transferred my assets? You can indeed. So this is an interesting question, and I could have opened that. This is a really interesting question in my opinion, because of how you want to set up if you have multiple devices. So for me personally, I have my Ledger Nano S Plus set up as the main device that I use when I use any assets actually, and when I actually want to do something with a really cold wallet. What I mean by that is a wallet that I rarely take out of, if ever, and I just use it as kind of like a piggy bank. I just keep putting on money in, right? I might use, let's say, a Ledger Nano X for that or something like that. And so they could be using the same recovery phrase or a different recovery phrase. So it's the recovery phrase in particular that will affect what accounts you can access. So if you want to access the same accounts with both the Ledger stacks and the Nano X, you can use the same recovery phrase. If you wanted to use totally different accounts that had no link to each other, essentially, you could potentially use a different recovery phrase too. So you do have quite a few options in terms of how you get that set up. Okay, so let's get this this address. Normally, I'd go through the receive process. What that does is actually checks on the device itself. You can go receive, and it'll ask the device. It's like, hey, can you get the public key for this address, for this account, which would, of course, give us the address. You'll be able to see here it's accessing the device, and we'll go through the receive process. But you can actually, if you're not aware, you've got for us already, get that through a different part as well. I'll just have to verify that here. I approve that. Done. You can actually get that on the top right here. You can see that, let's close this bad boy. You can use the edit account. You can go to advanced, and you can get the address there without going through that process, just in case you need it. Okay, so I think I was talking about the way addresses look, and you might have seen addresses start with 0x before. If we go to Etherscan, for example, the address is going to be the same. Not sure what happened there. The address is going to be the same. You see, it's a valid address because it does come up not with the 404 that we saw before, but it comes up with an empty or address with no transactions on it. But if we go to Polygon Scan, for example, which some might consider layer 2 or a side chain or whatever, you'll see, again, I'm not sure what happened there, but if I make sure to search it correctly, you'll see the same thing happens. I get an empty address as opposed to that 404. So we know it's a valid address, but they're both valid addresses for the same, they're both valid addresses, but you control them both, right? And so if you don't remember which network you've sent your assets on, it might appear on the Polygon network. It might appear on Ethereum, where I was before. I mean, it could be on Avalanche C chain and things like that. So I think this is the one thing I wanted to talk really a little bit in depth about, being that when you go to an exchange like Binance, I could potentially log on and show you all the different networks that they have available. But if I remember correctly, the last ones were like Arbitrum, Optimism, everything like that, that you can use to access. Where was I? As long as you know which network you sent it on, then you'll know where to potentially look for your assets or how to access those assets. Okay, I want to see if there's any other interesting questions down here. Boom. Will Ledger Stacks be able to store the keys to multiple wallets on a single device? Oh, looks like my colleague answered you. Can store as many private keys? Yes. But I think one thing to note, Dale, is that it's not that you'll store multiple. You'll be able to store the recovery as keys to multiple wallets on a single device, yes, but not multiple recovery phrases. I just wanted to make that clear, just in case. You had that as well. Boom. Okay. Let's go from the here, Adam. Okay, but with every new ledger user, the chance of two people having the same key get lower and lower. Is there anything that we've done about that? This is something that can come up. I think that with regards to the chances of people having the same key, let's go into the math, because every single person, you know, they make a new address here, make a new address there. Let's think about, let's say, how many addresses can there be in total, right? I remember we do have a Help Center article about that, actually, Adam. So what is it? Same address as someone else, Ledger support. I can never remember the titles, but the one thing that is very easy to remember, looks like it's not here, I'll just mention it to you, would be that the chances of you receiving the same address or using the same address, getting the same recovery phrase as someone else, is at a minimum the same chances of you winning the lottery multiple times in a row. It's not something that I would consider as likely at all. You definitely, I don't. I think worrying can be warranted, but thinking about the math, it's very hard for. I think one thing to note is that it's very hard for humans to think about these ridiculously huge exponential numbers. So it's not something I actually worry about day to day. I think it's something good to consider and think about, because it gives you a better understanding of why something is like a recovery phrase or the private keys are important. But it's not something that anyone is doing anything about that I'm aware of, because it's not something that will affect people's day-to-day use at this stage or in the near future. So I hope I've eased you a little bit. It's so rare that it would require probably millions or billions of years of every single person on the planet using it to potentially become an issue. So just something that I might think about. I mean, ask more questions if you have, Adam. It's definitely an interesting topic to talk about. Okay. Karan asks, can't I have more than 4 BTC addresses on the Ledger Nano X native SegWit? You can have as many addresses as you want, Karan. You can actually add as many as you'd like. You just need to have a transaction on that account. Let's go here. That might be the issue that you're running into, Karan Patel. Let's go back here. And if I go back and I add another BTC account, you'll see what it says specifically, that you need to have a transaction in there. Doesn't mean that the accounts don't quote unquote exist or that you can't access them. Just means that because within Ledger Live specifically, you'll need to make sure that you have a transaction on that account already. All right. So how might you get around this, or if you really are insistent and you need to manage multiple accounts, you can potentially use a third-party wallet. Electrum for Bitcoin is a very common one, and potentially there are others as well. So if you did need to have lots and lots and lots of addresses, it's something to consider, using a third-party wallet if you needed to. I had seen a couple of questions. Blessed for Success mentions, how do you sell XRP? How do you, or any other token, you would use an exchange. You would use either the buy or sell tab within Ledger Live if it's supported, or you would use any exchange, any DEX that would be supported. So it's just something to consider if you are going to use that. If you do want to sell, rather. Okay. Eric has mentioned, is Ledger going to release Ledger Live for ARM? I would love to see that personally, honestly. It's not something that I know is on the horizon, if I remember correctly. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, definitely not something. I mean, the only way that we can run it on an ARM-based device would be if the device is running either Android, or I think there are OS X devices that run Ledger Live. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news in this particular case, but if there's if there's a specific use case that you need it for, get a hold of us. We might be able to try and direct you through to a workaround or something like that. So. All right. Mike mentioned, is it safe to update your Ledger wallet without BTC on it, without chance of losing it? You can have BTC on your address when you update it. That is totally fine. Remember that if you have your recovery phrase, if you have your recovery phrase, you can use your recovery phrase to restore it to any compatible wallet, whether that's a Ledger Nano device, a competitor's device, a software wallet, or anything like that. So if you don't have the recovery phrase, there is a chance that depending on how big of an update it is, that the account will not update, the recovery phrase may be removed from the device, maybe reset back to factory settings is a better way to put it. So that's why we normally talk about the recovery phrase when you're talking about updating your device. So I hope I answered that question there. Don't worry about it, about losing any assets, BTC, Ethereum, anything, if you have your recovery phrase when you update your device, Mike. So hopefully it's all good. Boom. Would screen repair be available if ink screens on Ledger stacks is subject to wear and tear? I will want to get the answer to that myself, actually, because obviously I have also purchased the stacks myself. So I'll write that down, screen repair, because that is a really good question, and something that would be affecting all of our users as well. So I want to let you know, hopefully maybe there's some way, if you send us an email for our support, maybe we can get a hold of you and let you know, or something like that, subscriptions. Okay. All right. John Doe, it would be better if best to chill with that one, John. But XCC, why don't we look, all right? Ledger stacks would be pretty similar. I don't see XCC supported with our devices at the moment. I wouldn't consider XCC to be supported with Ledger stacks in particular as of yet, but it's something to look into if the developers want to get a hold of us or anything like that. Oh, Mike, I see that you mentioned, can you stay on an old version and not updating? I wouldn't suggest it, for sure. It's definitely not something that we suggest, because let's say there is a issue with, let's say we wanted to fix on our back end and you're on an old version, it might affect your experience. It can work for some time, but again, we definitely don't recommend it. So we generally recommend you keep everything up to date as best as possible. I mean, if there's a specific reason, maybe let me know. We can try to think of a workaround, but it's not something we recommend nearly at all. Nim, I hope that was it. Is it possible to have a fixed BTC deposit address? Funnily enough, you can always use the same address when you use a BTC. So, for example, here I'll show you. Maybe let's get my first Taproot address. Boom. I'm gonna have to unlock my device. Hopefully you guys can see it. Yeah. Boom. Okay. Bitcoin app open. So we can get the specific, okay. My second screen is just about to die. Okay, boom, okay, so you can see my device, my address there, right? That address does not change. The reason you can change the device, the reason you might see a different address rather is because the address changes, the receive address changes based on for your privacy. What that might mean is like when you send it to one BTC to address 1, 1 BTC to address 2, 1 BTC to address 3. Now you've got 3 addresses that technically from the outside don't have any relation to each other. You can still use that old address actually to receive assets. That'll still work. It just won't be as private. So just something that to consider. So again, you can use the old address if you'd like, but it's not something we generally recommend. And I will approve this address, and yeah, it's all good. Boom. All right. I see 8014. If someone lost their 24-word phrase, but if the device is physically with them, can I recover the funds of the device to any other wallet? You can. You would need the PIN because you have the device itself. So obviously it's like your own device. You grab it, you send it to wherever the temporary address that you need to, and then you reset your device back to factory settings, get a new recovery phrase that has no relation to the old one, and start sending the assets back onto the new address. So that's just how you would go through that in particular. Okay, Eric. Yes. Raspberry Pi. It's something that I'll write down too, because I do have a Raspberry Pi Zero actually that I want to use. Not for Ledger Live in particular, but just for fun things on my side. So I would, yeah, I don't have a specific, any real specific time frame or anything like that, or even that it's on the horizon necessarily, but definitely something that I'll pass up as being something that users want. Obviously, we love to hear what you guys think. We want to make sure we have the features and prerequisites for managing all the assets that you guys have. So really stoked. So yeah, definitely we'll pass that on because it's definitely something that we want to hear. Boom. Okay. Oh, Nico mentions, where's the merch? That's a really good question. Boom. I would, again, love to see some more merch. So we can do more of that. So I'll write that down too. Okay. I think what I wanted to talk about other than that, so I think I already mentioned before, guys, if you guys are withdrawing your assets from Binance, from Bybit, from Coinbase, whatever it might be, I think first thing always to do is to check, if the assets are supported. If you only want to manage them within Ledger Live, if the assets are supported in Ledger Live, you can see Bitcoin, Ethereum, they're all here. And the second thing would be to make sure you know which address, which network you're sending them to, or from, or on, whatever the correct nomenclature is. Now, why is that? So let's just use my own addresses, and I'll go to Etherscan. And let's just go to a random address. It doesn't really matter. So with this address, you know, they've just sent a whole bunch of stuff. Looks like they have some NFT stuff, yeah, things like that. It's not going to look the same for other networks, right? So like if I go to Polygon and I check the same address that we did before, they have no transactions. Looks like, I assume some people have been sending them some spam NFTs maybe. No, it looks like some kind of minting, some stuff like that. But they're not going to be the same. So you got to make sure you add the correct account based on which network you've sent them on, if it's supported, so that you can go from there. Another thing would be like optimism. Is going to be something that isn't going to necessarily pop up for, or isn't necessarily something that most users use. Yeah, you can see no transactions. So, but it is an option within Binance. Same with if we go to, I forgot what the BSC scan is, what it's called. If we go to Binance Smart Chain, for example, you know, it looks like he has some transactions, but they're different transactions, right? So please just make sure you know which network you've sent it on, what asset you've sent it specifically, and we can try to get a hold of you. You can try to get a hold of us rather. We can try to give you a hand from there if need be, to try and get you to manage those assets. Just make sure not to send. Just make sure if you know that you're sending it to the correct address, then and network, then perfect. You'll be all G from there. Okay, I rambled on for a bit. I think Miguel had a question there. And also Rock and Roll CEO, looks like colleague mentioned that as well. Awesome. Okay, Miguel, I still have problems on .synchro and Ledger Live. Let's have a look. My understanding is that there should be, all of the issues should be mostly resolved. I'm going to add an account here just to see if we can check that out in particular, at least with synchronization. If you're not, if you're not seeing something else in particular, definitely let me know. We can definitely have a look at that for you. Let's have a look. It's going to add the addresses, add the app as well. Yeah. Okay. How to send mana to Ledger, William mentions. If you're sending any kind of token or any asset to a Ledger device, just got to make sure that it's supported. So if mana, if I remember correctly, it does exist as some form of token on EVM chains. So generally speaking, let's say you're sending it on as an ERC20 token on Ethereum, you just need to make sure you add an Ethereum account, get your Ethereum address, and you can receive mana in that way. Miguel. Yes, looks like clear cache, rewards. Okay. My understanding, at least with showing rewards, because I have answered a couple customers as well with regards to that in particular, it is something that they are working on. If I was able to give you a specific resolution date, I definitely would, but I wouldn't have one at this stage. But I mean, if you'd like, set up an email with us. You can even mention my name if you want. We can I can set it so that when I receive note that that's been resolved, I can just shoot you an email if you'd like, and sort you out from there. Oh goodness gracious me. Looks like the device. Okay. I don't always have the best experience when I perform the app dependency check to install applications, by the way, guys, as you can see. I normally prefer to go into my Ledger to install things, just so you guys get a better idea of like how you're managing your devices and things like that, just as I answer your questions. Hi, not sure if this has been answered, Abba asks before, but when connecting Ledger Live to a local BTC node via SatStack, it creates a new wallet. How does it differ from a regular BTC wallet? That I might need to double check with you. But if you jump onto our Discord, that might be the best place for us to have a chat with you. Reason being, there's a couple of the devs that do work on that. They're on there as well. If you don't want to do it, don't worry. Just jump onto. Oh, well, there you go. But generally speaking, a lot of the guys that work on the SatStack, they're actually on the Discord. I'm on the Discord as well if you guys have any questions. So it's just something to mention in particular. Okay, so let's install this dot app. I really want to see if this, at least if there's any synchronization issues in particular within Ledger Live, or if it's like you mentioned, it's just the rewards, and not just, but the rewards and the correct balance. But as a workaround, you can always use your subscan, like you've mentioned. Yes. Again, I'll make sure to check in with them again, Miguel, because we want to make sure that we get it all set up. But yeah, you can use Poker.js subscan to check that just for now. I know it's not the best resolution and it's not that convenient, but definitely at least want to provide you with some kind of workaround at this stage while they're trying to get that all set up and ready to go. Okay. Let me just jot down a couple of things that you guys mentioned as well. But that's probably, other than that, that's probably about all that I wanted to mention. Just that in the chaos of us, withdrawing your assets from the exchanges, their exchanges are good for some things, of course, but oops, not Dolt. Exchanges are good for some things, and I use them regularly, but I think it's very important that you manage the assets. You own the assets yourself by owning the recovery phrase, so just make sure that you know which network, which asset you're withdrawing, if it's supported. There's just a couple of things there. Okay. As an experienced Ledger user, first things to do once I have received my Ledger Stacks device. First things to do once you're receiving your Ledger Stacks device. Nothing out of the ordinary, being that you've already used a Ledger, it would just be to get your Ledger device, get your recovery phrase out. If you want to use the same recovery phrase as the Ledger Nano X or the Ledger Nano, whatever Nano you have, Nature Boy, that you're using, and just make sure to either restore it with that recovery phrase or restore it with any specific address, specific recovery phrase that you need to do. I think I talked about before the difference between using different recovery phrases and the same recovery phrase. Personally, I use multiple with the same and multiple with their own recovery phrase because they have different purposes, and that way they're isolated, they're separated, and things like that. So it's a very interesting topic that I love to go into, because let's say you have this really cold wallet that you only put into, you never take out of. If it's an address, if it's an asset, if it's any asset actually, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin, or for example, you could just get the address. I could get my BC1Q address for Bitcoin. I could get my 0x address for Ethereum and all the EVM chains, and I could just use that address. I make sure to keep that safe because I don't want someone to change it and make me send it to them. But once I have that address, I can just keep sending it, and I don't even need to have it, that recovery phrase on a specific Ledger device itself. I can just have that in like a bank safe or whatever it might be, right? So if you use like a Crypto Zeus or something like that, so it's an interesting topic, and yeah, I really appreciate the answer, the question, Nature Boy. It's definitely something that that I love going into. So yeah, whatever recovery phrase you want to set it up with that. I personally use the password app, as well as what are some other apps that I use, Fido and things like that. So getting all that set up as well, if they're supported, would be something that that I'd look out for when you're getting set up for the first time. So hopefully that answers your question. I mean, if you have anything more specific, definitely let me know. Serhan, I hope I pronounced that right. I think one of my colleagues mentioned that to you, or mentioned already, but yes, both the Ledger Nano X and the stacks are just as security as each other. There's not one that's more secure than the other. I think what's important between the stacks and the Ledger Nano X and the S is what you might get for them in particular, right? So, I mean, let's say you're a totally new user and you have no idea what you want out of a device, what you want out of your cryptocurrency journey, why don't we look at the wallets, right? And we can see what the difference is, what you might be able to do. So obviously Stacks is the newest one, not necessarily fully out yet, but one that you can pre-order at the moment. So what does the Nano S Plus have? It has, its security, you can see is the same. Support for NFTs and compatible with Ledger Live. But I think the biggest difference between the X and the S Plus is Bluetooth. Do you want to use Bluetooth every day? Some people don't trust Bluetooth. That's totally understandable. You can use the Ledger Nano S Plus. You can disable the Bluetooth and just use USB on the Ledger Nano X. You can use the Ledger Stacks as well. But the Ledger Stacks does have Bluetooth, as you can see as well. But I think the biggest difference here are the new quality of life things. So for me personally, using the Ledger Stacks and using it compared to Ledger Nano X, it's just more a pleasure to work with, being that you've got a bigger screen. It just feels better, especially for, not all of us are, I'm a little bit older than a lot of my colleagues, but not all of us are 25, What if someone's retired and they want to manage their cryptocurrency assets? The Ledger Stacks is a potential solution for them because of the bigger screen and the better UX in particular. So it's just something to keep in mind. Jonathan mentions, will VeChain be supported one day in Ledger Live? I can't answer that, unfortunately, Jonathan. It's not something that I'd be able to say 100% yes or no, but that would be my expectation that they would want to do. Eric is... So Saran mentions more about the secure elements in particular. With secure elements, yeah, even if the chips are different, doesn't mean that the security is going to be totally different or anything like that. I just to chime in with regards to that. I know Eric mentioned about multi-sig, and I know my colleague actually already answered that in particular. Yes, Ledger Live doesn't support it, but you can use Ledger. You can use the Ledger device in conjunction with multi-sig. Casa is the one that my colleague mentioned. Let's actually have a look at that at the moment. But boom, there you go. You can use Casa, or you can use, I think another common one that I've heard of is Gnosis Safe. So just something to keep in mind there as well, just to jump into that one. Boom, to cash out on anything on your ledger, do you have to send it back? This is Glynn's. Do you have to send it back to an exchange, or is there another way to cash out direct from your ledger? So me being Australian, I'm not Parisian or French. There was something back home in Australia that was that Ledger isn't associated to, called Living Room of Satoshi. That was something that you could use. But just for any of the Australians out there, doesn't mean that it's non-KYC, but it's just something that you can use. But the other ways to use would be an exchange. That is right. To cash out to fiat in particular, right? So those are the things that you can do to cash them out, or you can spend your Ethereum and Bitcoin with the CL card by Ledger. That's another thing to keep in mind. So those are a couple things that you might be able to use to spend those assets that you've got. Okay. There we go. The two. Oops. I received my card, but cannot top up USDC. I don't, Imonti, I don't know if you responded to us with regards to that, or if you sent it to the CL Cards team in particular, or if you're not sure. Let me just double check. If you're getting a specific error message, you can pop that in chat if you get if you see that in particular, but I don't have from an external address. I think Imonti, okay, yeah. Imonti looks like what my colleague has mentioned to reach out to us. It's probably better that we go into more detail to help you. It's supposed to be trying to doing this over live stream. But it does sound like a specific issue, so hopefully we can get that sorted for you. Why Ledger Stacks limit 8 devices per order? I don't know what to tell you with regards to that one. That's a bit out of my hands in particular, but I can't imagine that they'd be trying to stop you too hard from buying too many in particular, Chand. Just as a outside observer, I'm not 100% sure why that would be in particular, to be honest. All right, RC mentions, could you please inform us if it will stop working? The Ledger Nano S won't stop working by itself, just as a heads up. You can continue to use your Ledger Nano S going forward. It's not like your Ledger Stacks will stop working, RC. Or is it just like one? Okay, looks like iPhone 1 and works, but the company is not working on the upgrades and marketing. I don't know what you mean by relating it to the iPhone in particular, but it is something that it should still keep working. But if it doesn't, either you can get a hold of us, or if it stopped working and it's outside of warranty, for example, you might need to get a new device. Maybe that's maybe that'll answer your question more in particular. Boom. Okay. All right. Boom. So also asks, the Ledger Nano X comes in different colors, still out of stock. If I remember correctly, yes. I don't have any new, even internally, I don't know that that they've actually restocked those in particular. I wish they would have, to be honest. I know people are desperate for self-custody, you know what I mean? Yes, yes, it is RC. It is an old model. It definitely will still work. There might be some more restrictions because you have a lot less space to manage those assets. For example, if I don't have my Ledger Nano S with me at the moment, but if I remember correctly, there's enough space for me to put in BTC, ETH. To be honest, those are the only two that I use. But if you wanted to add more, it might be a bit tough. You just have to uninstall the application and then reinstall it later if you need to. Stace mentions the Genesis Pass on secondary market. How can you tell if the NFT for the Ledger Nano X hardware has already been redeemed? You wouldn't get the Ledger Nano, the Genesis Pass to redeem the Nano X. The black on black, I'm assuming, is the specific device that you mentioned. So you wouldn't want to get if you just want to get the Ledger Nano X black on black, you would probably be better off getting the redeemable NFT on its own. So I'll actually show you on the website itself, on a NFT marketplace to get it. It's not something, the way that they were going to do it, they're going to have a website and everything like that, and that might have been a bit too complex. But it is something that they considered, so they wanted to make it a little bit easier. It was an airdrop to people that owned it in particular, if I remember correctly. Boom, let me get the black on black up, and then they could mint that. They could mint it, and it will be airdrop to them in particular. Sorry. black on black. Let's wait for it to pop up. My computer does not like the streaming, as you can tell. But in any case, I'm joking around. Oh, there we go, the OpenSea. I've got the Rarible up here, my colleague put here, and you can buy that here, and then you can go to our market.ledger.com, and then you can claim it from there. Just to give you a better idea. Just taking a bit long to load for us. So you can see here, you can place a bid there, everything like that. Hopefully that answers your question. 0.064 is pretty bloody cheap, if I'm honest. Sorry for the language, but it's pretty cheap, if I'm honest. So like, I think it's really something to keep in mind. I've got mine here. I don't know if you guys can see. So I'm absolutely stoked with it. So very hard to scratch too. I'm probably going to get kicked out of the room soon. So if you guys still have any more questions, definitely let me know. Hit us up in the chat for a little bit longer. I think the only thing I'd mention, if you did want to get a hold of us for anything more complex, if you can go to support.ledger.com. I think I mentioned it initially, and you can use the contact us button on the bottom right hand side for us to talk to you, get a hold of you. We do have a lot of incoming requests at the moment, especially with everyone trying to take their money off exchanges. So please be kind to the guys that do answer your questions. Otherwise, you can try to get a hold of us, on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever it might be. We'll try to answer them there as well. And yeah, it's I know it can be quite intense when you're taking it off exchanges, because you don't have someone. Now it's on you, right? Like if you lose your recovery phrase and you lose a device, it's all gone. So we're here to guide you through. We don't want you guys to lose your assets. We want to make sure you have a good journey. Eric, I won't forget you, because Raspberry Pi, I'm stoked for. Would be stoked for my own benefit, to be honest. So hopefully we'll be able to see what we can do with regards to that. But yeah, don't give out your recovery phrase. We would never ask for them from you. And yes, Miguel. No, that is definitely something we do know about. But yes, we will definitely I'll try to get that fixed for you as well. But yes, we just don't want you to lose your recovery phrase, lose your assets, anything like that. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, support.ledger.com, ledger_support for Twitter, and we can answer your questions from there. Hopefully you guys have a good week. Stay safe in the market out there, and don't sign any transactions that you don't know. Thanks. Bye.